The scene begins at Jinah's school, where Song-yi is seen preparing to confront a pair of orcs. Jinah tries to stop her, urging her not to engage them. However, Song-yi boldly declares that even though she's only an E rank, she's still an awakened being. The two orcs observe the girls with suspicion. One of them asks if the girl confronting them is the human with mana they sensed earlier. The other orc replies, "No, there's someone stronger," as his gaze shifts to Jinah, noticing the powerful mana emanating from her. Suddenly, one of the orcs charges at them with his axe raised high, shouting that the scent he's following is coming from the girl, and that she needs to die. Jinah and Song-yi brace for impact, but just before it lands, Jinah realizes something strange. Nothing hits them. As she opens her eyes, she sees a massive shadow orc standing in front of them, having blocked the attack. Jinah is left speechless, wondering in awe if Jin Woo is the one who sent this creature. The shadow orc throws a devastating punch at the dungeon orc, sending it flying into the ceiling and crashing outside. The remaining orc looks on in shock as two more shadow orcs appear, standing protectively in front of Jinah and Song-yi. The scene shifts to Busan, where Jin Woo and the Knights Guild have just entered a dungeon. Jiangsu suddenly shouts in alarm, identifying their enemy, a twin-headed ogre. He warns everyone to stay alert as the enormous dungeon monster looms before them. As the ogre charges forward, Jiangsu activates a skill. Mana flares from his hands as he braces himself. He positions both arms in front of him like a shield, just as the ogre's attack collides with the barrier he created. Jiangsu calls out to Yuntae, who readies his weapon and dashes forward with lightning speed. In a flash, he slashes across the ogre's eyes, shouting to his teammates that they need to deal as much damage as possible. The ogres scream in pain. The other hunters join the fray. A female hunter swings her axe, slashing one of the ogres, while a male hunter strikes the other with his sword. Meanwhile, their mages unleash a flurry of fire and electric spells. The combined assault scorches the ogres, ultimately bringing them down. Once the ogres are defeated, Jiangsu orders everyone to regroup, noting that things aren't going as smoothly as expected. He had thought the raid would be easy, but he hadn't anticipated facing such a tough boss right at the start. He then turns to Jin Woo and asks if he knows the other name for twin-headed ogres. Jin Woo replies seriously, "Gravekeepers." "That's right," Jiangsu says, adding that while gravekeepers are manageable as dungeon bosses, encountering them at the dungeon entrance often means one thing: an army of the undead is nearby. Sure enough, a horde of undead begins approaching. Yuntae then turns to Jiangsu, asking what they should do and whether they should attack. As the hunters observe the undead, they quickly notice something odd. The undead seem to be staggering, not charging. In fact, they appear to be retreating, as if being chased by something far more terrifying. Meanwhile, Jinwoo reflects on the fact that, since they had described this as a high-tier A-rank dungeon, he had come with high expectations. Suddenly, Jinwoo senses something and stops. A serious expression crosses his face. He tells the group there's an urgent matter he must attend to, and that he's leaving. Jiangsu is shocked and protests. Without Jinwoo, they could all be in danger. Jinwoo calmly replies that he's sending someone just as reliable in his place. A shadow emerges from Jinwoo, revealing a monstrous figure. Jiangsu gasps, "Isn't that the ant from the Jeju Island raid?" Jinwoo nods. "I don't think it needs any introductions. It'll handle things from here." He then instructs Beru to protect the humans. Beru asks what he should do with the others. Jinwoo responds coldly, "Do as you please." With a fearsome roar, Beru unleashes a shockwave that startles the hunters. Terrified, one of them wonders aloud if this creature will truly be their ally. His female teammate scolds him for bad-mouthing Jinwoo earlier. Jinwoo then summons 20 additional shadow soldiers and asks the group, "Is this enough?" He then turns to leave. Jiangsu and Yerim call after him, asking if he's really leaving them alone with those monsters. With an intimidating gaze, Jinwoo says that if they prefer, he can dismiss the shadows, but warns them that doing so might not work in their favor. The two fall silent, trembling, and Jiangsu reluctantly agrees. Jinwoo then checks his shadow exchange skill cooldown. 1 hour, 42 minutes, and 16 seconds remaining. Frustrated, he curses under his breath. He can't waste any more time. Without hesitation, he sprints toward the dungeon's exit. Jiangsu, stunned, watches him go. Yoontae asks what they should do now. Jongsu replies, "Hold on. I'll think of something." As Jin Woo nears the dungeon gate, he sees light ahead. He reflects on the signals he received from the soldiers he left with Jinah and the bad feeling gnawing at him. Just then, he encounters a massive army of undead blocking his path. With no time to waste, he glares at them and shouts, "Get out of my way." Drawing twin daggers, he charges, only to witness something completely unexpected. The undead, rather than attack, all kneel before him. Jin Woo, shocked, wonders why they're kneeling. He asks himself, could it be because I'm a high-class necromancer, someone capable of commanding the undead? Without missing a beat, he leaps into the air and calls upon one of his shadows, Kaisel, who materializes beneath him. From above, Jin Woo sees the kneeling undead as he soars toward the dungeon gate. Outside the dungeon, the people waiting are stunned by the sight of Jin Woo riding Kaisel, emerging through the gate like a force of nature. Without delay, he commands Kaisel to fly to Jinah as fast as possible. He activates his Monarch's domain, increasing Kaisel's stats by 50%. The chapter ends with Kaisel releasing a powerful, echoing screech as they take off, heading straight for Jinah's school. The chapter begins with the shadow orcs slashing the dungeon orcs who had tried to kill Jinah. Other students are visibly shaken by the chaos unfolding before them. One of the shadow orcs grabs the heads of two dungeon orcs with its large hands and smashes them into the floor with such force that their faces are buried deep into the ground from the impact. The students are left stunned, wondering if these monsters that have appeared are here to protect them, and if they are allies sent to safeguard them. Jinah, confused, looks at one of the shadow orcs and asks aloud, "Is Jin Woo here too?" She calls out his name, but the shadow orc immediately places its arm in front of her, blocking her from harm, and gestures toward the window. Outside, a large group of orcs is seen advancing toward them. The scene shifts to a throne room. A crack suddenly appears, and a large explosion occurs. Sitting on the throne is an orc, who introduces himself as Groctar, the chief of the Red Blade tribe. He declares that the final ban has been lifted and that nothing can stop him now. Another orc reports to Groctar that a group of high-ranking orc warriors is helping the humans. Enraged, Groctar shows his sharp teeth and questions whether their tribe cannot deal with just 3 high orcs. "How pathetic," he mutters. Groctar then grabs his sword and orders one of his subordinates to lead the way, declaring that it's time to slaughter the high orcs. The scene then transitions to the dungeon where Jinwoo's shadow ants unleash a powerful aura. Meanwhile, members of the Knights Guild are hesitating, unsure whether to remain, fearful of the summoned beasts. Jongsu, however, resolves that they cannot back down, thinking of the reporters outside who would have a field day if they gave up now. "Let's do this," he thinks, but as if on cue, Beru appears in front of him. Jongsu, trembling with fear, is momentarily paralyzed. Yet, he forces himself to speak, saying, "Let's go." Beru remains silent. Jongsu, sweating with fear, asks again, "Shall we go?" In a sudden leap, Beru rushes forward, leaving Jongsu puzzled. Before he knows it, Beru returns, tossing something in front of Jongsu, causing him to stumble back in shock. Beru then looks at the dungeon monsters before walking away with the other shadow ants. Jongsu's guild members rush to check on him, and he assures them that he's fine, though he continues to look at Beru in awe. One member asks if they are really going to let the shadow ants lead the raid, to which Jongsu replies, "Look at what Beru tossed." They all notice that it's the head of a death knight, killed effortlessly by Beru, one of the highest-ranking beasts. Jongsu can't believe how strong Beru is. Smiling, he adds, "High-ranking demons drop valuable essence stones. I'm sure you all know how much they're worth. Does anyone want to back out?" When Jongsu looks up, he's startled to realize his guild members have already moved on without him. Yoontae calls out to him, reminding him to hurry before he gets left behind. The scene shifts back to Jinah's school, where one of Jinwoo's shadow orcs is locked in combat with Groctar, the chief of the Red Blade tribe. Groctar's followers shout his name as they watch the battle unfold. Groctar, sword drawn, stands facing the shadow orc and speaks. The tattoo of an orc symbolizes victory in battle, proof of how many foes we've slain. He then taunts the shadow orcs, claiming that they have likely claimed a few lives too. He challenges them to make their fight more interesting. Groctar charges, sword raised, but the shadow orcs manage to block his attack, stopping him in his tracks. Not bad, Groctar acknowledges, impressed by their ability to halt his strike. He grips his sword tightly and increases the force, pushing it through their defense, slicing through the shadow orcs. However, after the first strike, the sliced parts of the shadow orcs begin to regenerate. Groctar, shocked, wonders if they are under a spell, realizing that no matter how many times he strikes them, it seems futile. His mind races. While he could easily kill hundreds of them, something keeps reminding him to focus on killing the humans. His grip tightens on his head as he realizes the situation is growing worse. He knows he must end this now. Suddenly, his eyes catch sight of Jinah, standing behind the shadow orcs. Groctar orders his men to grab her, saying, "The shadow orcs are powerless. Just keep attacking them to restrict their movements." Jinah and the others watch in horror as the orcs relentlessly assault the shadow orcs. Jinah is gripped by fear as Groctar grabs her by the mouth, lifting her off the ground. Groctar sneers, recognizing her magical powers. "So, you're the one behind all this," he says, tightening his grip on her and adding, "Die." But before he can finish, a sudden gust of wind fills the air. A wyvern, moving at breakneck speed, approaches from the distance. Groctar trembles in fear, his hands shaking as he releases his grip on Jinah. Song-yi quickly steps in to help her, asking if she's okay. The wyvern continues to approach, its terrifying roar echoing in the air. Groctar, frozen in fear, stammers, "Something terrifying is coming." Then, Groctar's worst fear is realized as he sees the wyvern in Jin Woo, enveloped in a dark, ominous aura, approaching him. Groctar, panicking, tries to retreat, but before he can act, he hears a loud explosion from the window as something massive lands. Groctar is forced to back away. Jinah, still recovering from the orc's assault, feels a hand gently touch her head. She hears Jinwoo's voice saying, "You're safe now." Meanwhile, Groctar is left frozen, staring in horror at the sight of the wyvern and Jin Woo, whose terrifying eyes are filled with rage. Groctar, trembling, begins to introduce himself as the chief of the Red Blade tribe, but he is immediately cut off by Jin Woo. With a cold, chilling gaze, Jin Woo points at Groctar and orders, "Shut up and wait right there." As the dark aura around Jin Woo intensifies, Groctar stands paralyzed, unable to do anything but await his fate.